My name is Casey, and I just want to welcome everyone to the Northwestern Community Services Board Prevention Department's virtual event with Miss America, Camille Schrier. We are so excited to have Camille as our guest and to see all of you virtually. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. We ask that you remain muted with your video off. We're going to be recording this presentation and sharing it on our various platforms. So just for everyone's privacy, we want to make sure that videos are turned off. And if you want to use speaker view so that you can see Camille large on your screen, you'll probably have the best experience that way. We'll get to do some question and answers at the end with Camille, so you can direct those to everyone in the chat, or if you want your question to be anonymous, you can direct it just to me in the chat box and I'll get to it at the end. So without further ado, I will introduce Camille. Camille Schrier grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, before moving to Virginia to pursue her undergraduate degrees. In 2018, Camille graduated with honors from Virginia Tech with dual Bachelor of Science degrees in biochemistry and systems biology, and is currently pursuing a Doctor of Pharmacy at Virginia Commonwealth University. In June of 2019, Camille was named Miss Virginia after breaking from tradition to perform the catalytic decompensation of hydrogen peroxide as her onstage talent. Her unique talent performance and focus on women in STEM has sparked a positive reaction of inclusivity for the program as a whole. On December 19th, 2019, almost 1 year ago, Camille earned the job of Miss America 2020 after competing live on NBC. As a Doctor of Pharmacy student and certified naloxone trainer, Camille's year of service is dedicated to reducing opioid abuse, medication errors, and the associated mortality of both, by educating across communities and demographics from pediatrics to geriatrics. Camille, I'll let you take it away.
Hi, thank you so much, Casey, for that great introduction. I'm going to take a minute and share my screen. Let's do that. Awesome. Let's get this into present mode. Okay. Thank you, guys. I'm really excited to be able to be here with you all. Of course, I'm Miss America during a pandemic, so it's always exciting to be able to have opportunities where I can continue my advocacy as Miss America for issues like this virtually. So thank you for being on and listening today. And I can't even believe, I know, Casey, you mentioned that it's almost a year ago, and it's actually going to be a year in about 4 days. And would have never expected to have the year pan out like it did, but grateful for all the things that I've been able to do. So my social impact initiative that I work on as Miss America is called Mind Your Meds, and it's drug safety and abuse prevention from pediatrics to geriatrics. So I like to talk about how this really was created. I was a pharmacy student not too long ago, finished my first year of pharmacy school at Virginia Commonwealth University. And in the middle of that year, kind of had this spontaneous idea to compete for Miss Virginia. And, I'd done a couple of those quote unquote pageants in the past. But I did them because I wanted to learn public speaking skills. I wanted to learn how to interview. I wanted to be comfortable in front of an audience. And those were things that I was never exposed to in my elementary, middle school, high school years. I wasn't a performer. I wasn't part of the school plays. I wasn't a singer. And those weren't skills that I had. So those types of competitions really allowed me to hone those skills, gain some confidence. And once I got into college, I was like, I'm kind of done with this. I got from it what I wanted to. But Miss America is kind of like the Super Bowl, right? Like you play football in high school and you're like, maybe one day I'll go to the Super Bowl. And the cool thing about Miss America is you can sign up for a local competition and try your luck to go to the state competition and then to Miss America. And that's exactly what happened. So March of 2019, I was literally the girl right on the left of the screen there. And I said, I'm going to sign up for this competition. I'm going to be too old. I'm going to do this. And when you start to compete in the Miss America organization, you each have to have your own social impact initiative. So a social cause that is important to you that you want to advocate for throughout your entire process. So whether or not you win your state title or you win Miss America, every woman gets the chance to advocate for a cause that's important to her. And so I am a daughter of a nurse. I grew up around medications. I always got sick as a kid, and I'm a pharmacy student. And so I saw a need for better education for medication safety for parents and kids and just people who take medications in general. We tend to be pretty bad at managing our own health and our own medications. So I wanted to focus on that. And then I took an naloxone training course in Richmond and didn't fully understand what Narcan was, number one, or really the depth and breadth of the opioid epidemic in this country. And so now I am the girl on the right side of your screen, and I am now Miss America by the grace of God. And I now get to focus 2 full years. I've taken 2 years off from school, 2 full years to dedicate toward this social impact initiative. And what a lot of you might not know is that the real job of Miss America is not to smile and wave and be a princess, but I am in charge of advancing the Miss America organization personally and professionally, but also dedicated to working on my own social impact initiative. Those are my 2 priorities this year. And so a lot of that has to do exactly with what we are talking about today. So it's not all butterflies and rainbows. This is actually me competing at Miss America. They changed the format of the competition this year actually to reflect how important the social impact initiative is to the job of Miss America. So I had a chance to talk live on NBC about what I wanted to do with Mind Your Meds this year. And that's me competing live. And you can see the Miss America crown on the bottom right corner of your screen. And that ended up on my head at the end of the night, which is pretty cool. So to go back to talk about really why this cause is so important to me and really should be important to all of us. If we look at data from the CDC in 2017, this is the most recent data I have, 16,214 people were murdered, 38,659 people died in roadway fatalities, 39,773 people died as a result of a firearm injury. And I chose those because those are kind of the typical things that we're afraid of, right? We don't want to get in a car crash. We don't want to get shot. We don't want to get murdered. Those are the things that we're typically afraid of as people. But there's a lot more people in this country that lose their lives to an opioid overdose or a general overdose of a different type of medication, including opioids in this country. You think of 47,600 people just losing their lives to opioids, and then 70,237 total fatal overdoses in 2017. That's a lot. It shocks me because the number is so high that I'm always appalled at how little we hear about it. And that's part of why I wanted to focus on this. It's not just opioids or illicit medications that can be illicit drugs, really, that can be an issue for patients and for members of our communities. We can think of things just as simple as over-the-counter medications or even up to prescription medications that are prescribed to us by a doctor and maybe given to us by a pharmacist. I think that there is a culture in our country, particularly, that if we got it from a doctor or we got it off of a shelf in a pharmacy, it is inherently safe. We can't hurt ourselves with it, and that we should just have full trust in this medication or whatever we're being given, and that we don't really always care to protect ourselves from it. And I'm not here to say that medications are dangerous. And in fact, they're usually not dangerous, but that's because they have directions on them. And to go back and to read those directions and make sure that you are being mindful of what you're putting in your body. It's as important as making sure that you get enough protein and carbohydrates and fats in your diet during the day. You want to make sure that you are being very aware of anything that you're putting in your body or your child's body. So if you are buying organic foods for your child, but you're not measuring their medication, that needs to change. So these are some things that I get to talk about this year, but particularly those over-the-counter medications. I see that bottle of NyQuil on the bottom left of the screen. And I remember being in college and my friends, when they would get sick, I had a friend that would just chug the NyQuil right out of the bottle. And like would make fun of me when I would tell them that they should measure it. They're like, you're just overreacting. And I remember someone telling me, and this really stuck with me, if we can't get patients to be respectful of the substances that they take, all the way down to things that really are pretty harmless, like a NyQuil or maybe just a general antibiotic, if that person can't be responsible with that medication, how are we going to expect that same person to be responsible with something that is really critical, like an opioid painkiller after a wisdom tooth surgery or after any kind of surgery or after an injury? How are we going to expect that behavior to change? We probably won't. So, starting with respecting substances as basic as NyQuil or DayQuil, that's where we need to start. And that has to do with culture changes. This is another really great story that unfortunately is a very true one. So I mentioned I was a doctor of pharmacy student, still am, but taking time off, I said that too. I got to do a rotation at my local Wegmans pharmacy right after my first year ended. And I was there, and my preceptor, who was the pharmacist on duty, she said, Camille, I want you to do something for me. We have this problem all the time. This was like a learning activity for me. We have this problem where parents get liquid augmentin, which is amoxicillin clavinate. It's an oral suspension. It's pink. It smells like bubble gum. You've probably given it to your kids or taken it yourself. It has to be refrigerated once it's mixed up. It comes in a powder, and then in the pharmacy, we add liquid to it and we shake it up and we give it to you. But it has to be refrigerated once that liquid is added. And so many parents don't read the directions. And I'm not blaming parents, because in the same respect, you are busy and you have a sick kid, and sometimes the last thing you're thinking about is what that bottle says. So she says, I want to know how long it's really stable for. So go look at some peer-reviewed articles. Tell me what the best number that you can come up with. I think that I came up with like 5 to 7 hours. And she, of course, has her own professional opinion. Don't quote me on a number. Ask your pharmacist if this happens to you. But I ended up going to my friend's house about a week later, and she has 2 toddlers. And she's like, my daughter, she's got this staph infection in her finger, and the doctor gave her this weird amoxicillin. Like, I've never seen it before. It's like brown. And I'm like, it's not supposed to be brown. And she's like, you're a doctor. You can look at it. And I'm like, I'm not a doctor. But let me look at it. Just hand it to me. She picks it up off the counter next to her refrigerator and hands me the bottle of spoiled augmentin that she forgot to put in the refrigerator because she didn't read the label. And this happens all the time. And these are the situations where I think about, general techniques that we can do to keep ourselves and our kids safe. Just being mindful of, how do I store this medication? How do I dispose of this medication? How do I measure this to make sure that I'm giving my child the right amount of medication? These are really, really simple things that we can do to keep ourselves and our kids safe. Narcan, that's another huge one. That's something that I spend a lot of time with. I talked about doing a Narcan training session while I was in pharmacy school, and I didn't really understand what Narcan was. And the misperceptions that are around Narcan boggle my mind. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later when I talk about stigma. But this is a life-saving medication that I am a huge advocate for. I carry it with me at all times. If you don't already have Narcan, you should go get it. We'll talk about that later too. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about kind of the structure of what I do in terms of Mind Your Meds. Oops, I gave it away. So I've talked about a lot of different things, and I'm a big diagram person. So this is kind of how I see Mind Your Meds in my head. It has 2 different wings to it. I do this one piece with that medication safety for parents, kids, caregivers, and yourself, measuring medication, storing them correctly, disposing of them correctly. But then, especially when we talk about opioids, preventing prescription drug abuse and combating the opioid epidemic. Opioids are that one particular substance that often transcend between prescription and illicit and have a huge abuse potential. So that's why I've focused more specifically on that. I do talk about often different types of prescription drug abuse as well, but this is the one that I focused on the most, and unfortunately seems to be the most pertinent in my area, and especially in the East Coast and right now. And then this goes a little bit deeper too. It's not just surface level. So that medication safety, is talking about educating parents and caregivers just on general medication safety when I go places. I'm talking about, again, those safe medication storage and disposal techniques. But that also connects into preventing prescription drug abuse. I think that safe medication disposal and storage some of the most proactive ways that we can prevent overdoses. That's another piece. Talking about naloxone, and I get to collaborate with a lot of wonderful organizations throughout this year, and we'll talk about that too. So just to go a little bit more into depth into each of these. So education is, I mean, so incredibly important in all of this, and that's one of the most important things that I can do as someone who doesn't have a pharmacy license yet. There is only so many things I can do without getting myself in trouble with the Board of Pharmacy, but educating on simple techniques are so important, and it's something that I can do to make a difference before I'm licensed. So when I was Miss Virginia, it worked out so well because Miss Virginia's job, no matter who she is or what her background is to go and do a school tour with the Virginia ABC, which is our liquor control board, and it's on drug and alcohol safety. And that was a perfect fit for what I already do. So I got to meet with 8,000 Virginia K through 6 students and their educators about general medication safety and drugs and alcohol with those kids. And it's hard sometimes. I learned a lot about talking to kindergartners about what alcohol is or what drugs are, and it's important. There's data that shows that the earlier that we talk to students about drugs and alcohol and how they are not beneficial to their lives, that really reduces the amount of students that choose to try them. So I brought this activity, and there's actually an example on the bottom right corner of your screen. It's called Pills versus Candy, and it was inspired by a poster that was always next to the elevator in my pharmacy school, and it became my own activity. And it's called Pills versus Candy. Those two pictures of those blue tablets, one of them are sweet tarts, and the other one is actually a prescription stomach medicine. And it's to show students how easily substances can be confused, and why you, number one, should never put anything in your mouth that you don't know what it is, or don't ask someone what it is, but also why you should never trust someone who basically gives you a piece of candy, which is kind of that overarching rule that we talk to students about. But it's something that they get really excited about. They always want to guess which one is the pill, which is the candy, and none of them ever get it 100% correct. And it kind of reinforces that idea that we have to be cognizant of what we put in our bodies. And that was that culture change that I was talking about in the beginning. Being respectful of substances, asking what's in things, questioning what we're putting in our mouth before we do. It's really an important tactic, especially to start at a young age. And so that was a fun activity I got to do with them. Also talking to caregivers to read and understand their prescriptions, or to ask their pharmacist. People are afraid to ask their pharmacist questions oftentimes because either they feel like they're being a burden, or maybe the pharmacist is busy. And I talk to pharmacists about being that pharmacist who makes the time to talk to your patients, but having that full understanding, even if you think you already know what you need to do, just to ensure that you know how to measure things. We talk about that. It's in my next bullet point, really the proper measuring devices, medication logs, pill organizers. Those are all things that are over on the right side of your screen. These are ways to prevent medication errors. If you don't already know, you should never measure medication with a spoon, even like a tablespoon or a teaspoon from your kitchen for baking. They have such a huge margin of error that when we're thinking about liquid medications, that is the dosage. You can give too much or too little medication so easily. You should always use an oral syringe, which is over there on the right. And you should never be sharing prescriptions with anyone, and that's true for everybody. Talked a little bit about this before, safe medication storage and disposal. I could talk about this all day. I've gotten to work with the CDC on this. They have an up and away and out of sight campaign, which does exactly what it sounds like, which is talking about putting all of the medications in your house up, physically up and away from your your kids, and locking them up, because you might think that, oh, there's nobody that's going to take them, like my kids won't take them. But if you have guests in your home, if you have people coming into your home for any reason, those medications could be at risk of getting into the wrong hands. And so I think that we all have to be safe and responsible prescription owners when we have substances in our home, especially those that are controlled substances. 2/3 of patients have leftover medicine after surgery, and very few safely store or dispose of them. I want you to think about if you have extra medication from a surgery or from something else laying in your home. And I'd like to ask you why, because once you're done with it, you shouldn't be using it anyway. People that tell me, oh, I'm going to keep the rest of my antibiotics until I get sick again. Don't do that. Finish them. Ask your doctor. And if you have extra medication, please get rid of it. Most pharmacies have a drop box, and that's what I have on the bottom right of the screen. And that's something that if you have friends or family that have this, older adults in your life, go help them clean out their medicine cabinet. Got to work with the DEA for National Drug Take Back Day, did some public service announcements with them. Again, really a proactive way to prevent accidental poisonings for kids and to prevent prescription drug abuse. This was just a screenshot from when I got to do my DEA. I was the face of the DEA for just a moment. These played nationally. This was a video about National Drug Take Back Day that went national on a bunch of different networks across the country, and was a radio commercial as well. So a lot of people were texting me and saying that they heard me, and I was so grateful because I was able to get the message out. And we had a huge turnout for National Drug Take Back Day this year. I think it's because a lot of people were at home cleaning out their houses, and that was a good thing. Naloxone, talked about this, and again, I'll talk about it more with stigma. I can't talk about enough how life-changing naloxone is. And if you don't really fully understand how naloxone works, I think of it like a magnet. So you have these receptors in your brain that opioid drugs attach to. And when they do attach there, they start to slow down the way that your body works, slowing down your breathing, slowing down your body processes. And unfortunately, that's how overdoses occur, because if your breathing slows down too much and your body processes slow down too much, you could stop breathing. And that's what leads to a lot of the overdose deaths. But naloxone basically is a stronger connector to that receptor than the opioid is. So it's able to knock it out like a stronger magnet. And it almost immediately reverses an overdose. I mean, in a matter of like 60 seconds to like 90 seconds, the person can be fully conscious again. And that's why I think this is such an important thing. Every death of someone that we lose to an opioid drug could have been prevented using naloxone. And so if we can be that first responder for people, if you are CPR trained, if you're AED trained, if you're a lifeguard, if you've gone through any of those kind of trainings, why would you not also get naloxone trained? And so something I'm really passionate about, there's lots of places that you can find naloxone for free at distribution events around your communities. It's something that you can have somebody come in and train your employees in your workplace. It's such a great tool. And it's something that I talk about very often and I carry with me. I have that little Revive bag. You see my opioid overdose reversal for Virginia. That's what it says. I know it's from my local health department in Virginia. So get your own. This is my favorite slide of all because it's something that I encounter all the time. And I don't have, actually, I feel like I'm very rare in the fact that I don't have a personal connection to anyone that has been affected with substance use disorder. And I feel like I'm the only one that can say that. But I carry the weight of the stories of the people that I meet. And to see the stigma in this world associated with people that face substance use disorders, it breaks my heart. So the photo of me on the right here is with a mom who came up to me and was telling me the story of her son who had just recently gone through a recovery program for opioid use disorder. And he had struggled and had multiple overdoses. And this is a mom. This is her son. And her son was just a couple steps away from me. And the way that people who have faced substance use disorder are treated in this country and in communities is just not right. And I am always shocked. These couple bullets on the left side of your screen are comments that I've gotten either in person or online about what I do. So when I talk about advocating for those who are going through recovery or those who are facing substance use disorder, people will say to me, don't people choose to do drugs, correct? Why are we spending time on this? My personal favorite, why would I carry naloxone? I'm not a drug addict. You can't use it on yourself. Spoiler alert. People talk about overdoses, saying that it's that person's fault. They're a junkie, which is unfortunately it's just an unfortunate word to call someone who's going through a medical problem. which I very much am a believer that addiction, which I lovingly call substance use disorder because I think it is a lot more respectful. It hurts my heart. People will tell me to let people die who are overdosing. Why would I take them? Why would I help save them? They've made the decision for themselves. And I get a lot of these comments, which is very interesting to me, that people get very angry that I talk about naloxone. They think that I should be spending time on advocating for EpiPens because people choose to do drugs, but people don't choose to have allergies. And it exhausts me. And this is part of the reason why I do this, because I think every person who has ever, what if you've made a bad decision in your life? I've made plenty of bad decisions in my life. I don't get judged by my bad decisions the way that those people who maybe they haven't even made a bad decision. Maybe they got addicted to medications because they were prescribed a medication. That's another piece of this. But even if you did make a bad decision, you don't deserve to be treated like this. And our world is very, very harsh, and it's something that I hope to change. It's unfortunate, but it's one thing that I am very passionate about. And I would tell you that if you have anyone in your life who kind of has this type of attitude, I would encourage you to educate them on substance use disorders and to remind them that those people who are going through this are someone's child, someone's brother, someone's sister, and they deserve to have a fulfilling life just like everybody else. So I talked about collaborating with other organizations, and I've been really, really lucky to have some awesome organizations that I've collaborated with. Namely the DEA. They are my friends now. Never thought that I'd be in the DEA as a pharmacy student. Of course, thankfully it's for a good reason. Got to go back to my own university, Virginia Commonwealth University, and speak at the medical center about what I do. I've worked with the bipartisan heroin and opioid task force in Congress, the leader of which is actually from my home district, which is very convenient, the state of Virginia and the Association of Hospital Pharmacies. Just been really, really cool. Want to talk a little bit more about the impact of what I've gotten to do with some photos. Where am I even going to start? I'm going to start down in the bottom right corner here. And, when we're talking about stigma, each of those women are moms that have lost children to overdoses. And again, when we think about the judgment that's on those types of families, those women feel judged in so many pieces of their life because they lost a child to overdose, and they shouldn't feel that way. Being able to connect with them and shake their hands is kind of motivating to me to be able to continue this, because they lost a child. And could that death have been prevented through the use of naloxone? Makes me want to talk about naloxone more. So that's definitely a touching photo. The upper right-hand corner, if you've ever watched the Netflix docuseries, The Pharmacist, it talks a lot about especially the opioid epidemic in terms of pill mills and doctors who are not responsibly writing prescriptions. And in this case, it was not even close to responsible. Definitely check that out if you haven't. Dan Schneider is now a great friend of mine and a great collaborator, and we've gotten to do a ton of work together this year. And he has his own advocacy that he does. The picture in the middle on the top, that is a man at a brain injury rehab center who cried when he met me because he knew that I advocated as Miss America for the opioid epidemic. And unfortunately, his brain injury was caused by an overdose many years ago. And he's now in a wheelchair, but is very successfully recovering and gaining his strength and mobility back. Gotten to do a lot of virtual events in that top left corner. That's most of what my advocacy looks like right now because of COVID. Kind of like what I'm doing right now, but it does not make it any less impactful. Bottom left corner again, that was National Drug Take Back Day. That's at my local police station. And again, if you have medications that you need to get rid of, your local police station is also a great place to go. They often take them back. And then again, in the middle, that's me talking at a recovery fest, actually that same place where I met all of those women who had lost children. It was interesting. I remember being there and I asked, I had everybody raise their hands if they had known anybody that had gotten COVID or had lost their life from COVID. And I would say like maybe 20% of the people maybe 200 were there. Maybe 20% of the people put their hand up. And I asked the group to raise their hand if they had known anyone who had overdosed or lost their life from an overdose. And I would say 60%, 70% of the hands went up. Now, it was a recovery based event, but when you think about the number of people in that group who had been affected by overdoses versus COVID, and what do we hear only about on the news right now? We hear about COVID. And there's data that shows how much the epidemic or the pandemic is worsening the opioid epidemic. We're looking at sometimes 200 people a day that we're losing to opioid overdoses. The daily number used to be around 130, and it's definitely increased, and it's sitting about 200 right now, unfortunately. These are some of the other things I've gotten to do. I talked about that heroin and opioid task force. That's my congressman there on the left. That was when I met with him, particularly about how we could collaborate. And then the right is me at the DEA just 2 months ago. If you didn't know, the United States Postal Service now has a drug-free USA stamp that they have released that will help spread awareness and support drug-free communities across the country. And I got to be there for the reveal of that, which was really cool. So I talked a lot about what I've done, but my impact is only my own. This problem and this culture change that we're going to talk about, this can't be done with just me. And so there's many ways that you can help when you're done with this presentation and go back into your life. So just a couple, these kind of go into different categories because it depends on who you are, what you can do in these types of issues. So as a citizen, that's all of us, right? We can take our time, we can read our prescriptions, understand them, not share prescriptions, lock them up, dispose of your old and unused medications, and definitely get naloxone trained. If you're a healthcare professional watching this, the biggest thing is to please create an environment that welcomes questions for your patients. Take the time to educate, take the extra moment to ensure understanding. Tell your patients how to store and dispose of their medications. And if you're someone treating pain for any reason, consider opioid-free pain relief modalities. It's not always an option for patients, but if you can consider them, that's better. For educators and researchers, looking at different options for intervening in opioid overdoses and treating those with opioid addiction or substance use disorders. New formulations for treating opioid use disorders and definitely other scientific advancements, which are crucial in ending the fight of opioid use disorders and particularly the opioid epidemic. Science is very key in this issue, and it's something that I'm definitely passionate about. So with that, I want to leave some time for questions. I know I've thrown a lot of information at all of you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if I haven't overwhelmed you with too much, hold on, now I'm on the wrong screen. I'm a mess, clearly. If you guys have any questions for me, I want to open up kind of the floor. If anyone has anything that they'd like to ask me, you can ask me literally anything about this. I'm happy to answer it. So I'll let you guys ask anything.
While people are brainstorming their questions, I'll ask two that I got directly. The first is, do you have suggestions on how community groups wanting to address these issues can work more closely with pharmacists, or how they can better engage with pharmacists?
I think that, pharmacists, I think one of the most important things that pharmacists can do is be that educator on medication safety. So if you are looking to, make an impact in your community, a pharmacist could be one of your greatest assets. They can help naloxone train your community members. That's one of the things that pharmacists do often. A pharmacist can help distribute naloxone at your events. They can help come in and talk about drug safety and substance use disorders with a different level of understanding than some other people, and maybe from their own experience. And so I think that engaging pharmacists is a very important way to help educate our communities about substances, and even coming in and talking to kids at schools. Pharmacists love to talk about medications, and so definitely use them. And the naloxone piece is really important as well.
That's great. Thank you. Another question I got is, I'm trying to think of how to word this. So do you have thoughts on how young people who are wanting to make a difference in their community but don't really know where to start because they are young?
Mhm. I mean, in general, and in terms of medication safety, I think looking toward kind of figuring, first of all, I mean, if you're wanting to do advocacy for, substance use disorders and these types of things, um, look for the need in your community, number one, and then reach out to professionals around your community to ask them how you can help, especially if you are a young person. Teaming up with someone who's already working on a project who can maybe be a mentor for you is a really great one. I've worked with a lot of really awesome professionals throughout this. Now, I'm a young person, but I'm not necessarily like a high school student. But finding people who are already doing the work that you're interested in, teaming up with them, learning about the issues, learning about what's needed in your community, and then being able to kind of use that as a springboard to do your own advocacy. That's kind of what I've done. And I think that that's one of the best ways that you can do that, no matter if it's this issue or any type of issue in your own community. That's a great way to go about it and really be successful.
We just got a question as to whether or not we'll be sharing the recording of this event. Yes, we will be sharing the
Awesome.
recording. So we'll send a link to everyone who's registered, but you can also find it on our platforms.
Amazing.
We get another question.
Cool.
Once your reign as Miss America ends, do you see yourself remaining active in community work around medication safety and overdose prevention?
The answer is absolutely. Partially because I quite literally will be in the pharmaceutical industry or working as a pharmacist. So it's kind of going to be like part of my job. But that's actually one of the really interesting reasons why I chose this, because I literally get to spend 2 years as Miss America working on an issue that affects my career. And so it's almost like a paid internship. So I'm using this again as a springboard to my own career so that I will be able to continue this. And I think that, I knew I was going to be a pharmacist, of course, but it could kind of change the way I look at my career in pharmacy as I start to become more passionate about these issues and see where pharmacists can help. So the answer is 150% yes, absolutely.
Yay, we love people in this field. We still have a little bit more time if anybody wants to submit some final questions. You're welcome to do so. Or if you want to go ahead and unmute and
Yeah,
ask Camille yourself, feel free.
you're totally welcome to. I can show you my sparkly crown too. I have it right here actually. But I will say, as I show this, this is a really interesting tool in this job because I have a very different role, especially when I'm talking to young people about the dangers of drugs and alcohol, particularly when I go into schools. You can have, a teacher or a parent come in and talk to those students, but when you come in and you're the princess and talk to them about things that can be dangerous for them, the kids listen to you in a different way. And I definitely value that, and being able to capture their attention, but also not scare them, but have them take you seriously and keep their attentiveness on the issue is a skill, number one, but also this helps. So I have to say that it's quite an honor to be able to, be that role model for so many kids and have the platform to impact them and talk to them about these issues, because I know that I grew up in a family where my parents always said nothing good comes from drugs or alcohol, and that was something that I was raised with, but not all kids get that kind of language at home. And so if I can come in and share with them my experience, and that, I'm someone that has stayed away from substances intentionally, and now I've been successful in my life. Now I'm Miss America. So maybe if they see, okay, well, she didn't do that and she won Miss America. So if they go to a party or they go to something with their friends and that comes up and they have to make a decision, those are difficult decisions to make for a lot of students. They can think back of, Miss America came in and she talked about all the cool things that she got to do in her life, and she didn't choose drugs or alcohol, that can be impactful. And then we can also think about preventing so many substance use disorders coming about in adulthood for those students. If they don't try it, oftentimes we can prevent them from getting addicted to it. So that's also one thing that I think is important. I'm definitely a prevention advocate. Preventative medicine, preventative education, it's all good.
Yes, we here in the prevention department would agree with that. I got another question. So just for context, Camille, a lot of the participants on this call are part of community coalitions,
Awesome.
which are just such incredible organizers of change. So this question asks, any suggestions on how to recruit professionals from the pharmacy industry to our community coalition?
I would say, depending upon where you are, reach out to pharmacy schools. Number one, that's a great place. There's also pharmacy organizations across the country, no matter where you are. So, like in Virginia, we have the Virginia Pharmacists Association, which is comprised of pharmacists across the state who have, number one, already signed up to be part of that group. So, they're probably looking for other opportunities to be involved in their communities. So that would be a great place to look. And every state has a state pharmacy association. I'm not sure where you're located, but look at your own state pharmacy association or local pharmacy schools, and you will find plenty of pharmacists that will want to be part of your group. And the other thing I'll say about a lot of the community resource programs, one of the things that I really see a lot of communities could benefit from is having small businesses and having businesses across your community be willing to take a chance on someone in recovery. One of the biggest problems that I've seen as I've traveled this year is those who have experienced overdoses or those who have experienced substance use disorder or still struggle with it, really struggling to find employment and stable housing and stable income. And so if you have people in your community who are looking for ways to help with these types of issues, if they're a business owner, encourage them to hire those in recovery. Take a chance on them, because that is the only way that we're going to continue to change this cycle in our communities. If we don't give people a chance, how are we ever going to expect that person to reintegrate and become a successful member of our communities if we don't give them a chance? So that's another thing that if you have the opportunity to talk about in any sense, definitely do that.
That's great. Thanks, Camille.
Of course.
We haven't got any more questions, so it's not too late, but if anyone has any last minute ones, go ahead and send
Absolutely.
them. I'll just share a couple of things before we conclude. For those who want to keep up with the Northwestern Community Services Board Prevention Department, you can sign up for our newsletter. I think Shannon's going to send the link to that in chat, and that way you can receive event invitations, helpful resources, information about your community in your inbox twice a month. A lot of people learned about this event from that newsletter, so it's a great resource. And we also just launched our Prevention Department podcast, Awareness to Action. We launched today, and our first episode features Robin Blumenthal, and next Tuesday's episode features Camille. So if you enjoyed this presentation and are wanting to listen in on what I found to be a really enjoyable interview, make sure you subscribe using the link that I'll send in the chat, because Camille's will be up next week. And Camille and I got to talk a little bit more in depth about some of the things that she just went over. So that's going to be really great. So definitely stay tuned for that. And then, of course, we have our social media at Lord Fairfax YRA on all platforms. And Camille, I'll let you go ahead and share how people can keep up with you.
Absolutely. You can find me on pretty much any social platform at Camille Schrier, just my first and last name. I do Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want, you can send me a message, and then I'll also put my email here in the chat box if anyone wants to reach out to me. Hold on. If you have any questions, want to reach out to me to collaborate in any way, please feel free to reach out. I'm available. I'm happy to do any kind of advocacy work in your communities as well.
Camille, we did get another question, and I think you and I can tackle this together because I think it goes to both of us. This person mentioned all of the great resources that you mentioned, like doTERRA bags and drop boxes, and asked if any of these are available locally. So I'll go ahead and say that we have doTERRA bags at the Prevention Department. Maybe Shannon can send her email in the chat so that you can reach out to her if that's something that you'd like for yourself or your organization. And Camille, I know you probably have something to add to that too.
I have a box of doTERRA bags in my house. I think that, you have to look at your local community resources. I like to talk about all of the things that are available, but finding them in your own communities, I think that that's one of the great things that Casey, your organization, is able to do in your community. So thank you for sharing that, because you're going to be better at answering that in your locality and around than I am. And local health departments, always a great place to start. Have to say that.
Yeah, and a lot of take back boxes can be found at local pharmacies,
Oh yes, absolutely,
police departments, that kind of thing. So
for sure.
great. Well, I just want to thank everyone for being here. Like I said, we will share this recording, so you can go ahead and share it with those in your life and your organizations and all of that good stuff. We'll also send it to you via email. Camille, I want to thank you for spending time with us. This was so wonderful. We're so grateful that you were here.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for everyone who tuned in to listen today. I really appreciate you being here.